It was supposed to be the kind of night every teenager remembers forever. A carefree sleepover filled with laughter, whispered secrets, and the comfort of friendship. But by the time the sun rose, 3 girls who had been inseparable since childhood were gone. No struggle, no sound, no witnesses. Just an empty house and a trail of chilling inconsistencies that made even the most seasoned investigators shiver. From the very beginning, this disappearance didn't behave like a normal case. Children vanish every year, yes, but 3 girls all at once, from the same locked house without a trace? That was something different, something darker, something the town of Briarwood would never forget. The 3 friends, Emily Carter, Sarah Jennings, and Madison Lee, were only 14 years old, but they shared a bond that felt older than time. Emily was the ringleader, with her curly auburn hair and an adventurous streak. She was the kind of girl who always planned the next sleepover, the next prank, the next dare. Teachers described her as clever and impulsive, someone who could turn even the dullest afternoon into an adventure. Sarah, on the other hand, was quiet and thoughtful, with a soft voice that often got lost in the chaos of middle school. She loved sketching animals in her notebook and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian one day. Friends said she had a calming presence, the kind of girl who'd quietly bandage your scraped knee while Emily dared you to climb higher. Madison was the joker of the trio. Blonde, bright-eyed, and endlessly energetic, she had a habit of bursting into laughter at the wrong times, like in church or during serious assemblies. Her parents used to say, "If Madison's in the room, you'll hear her before you see her." Together, the 3 balanced each other perfectly. Emily's daring, Sarah's thoughtfulness, Madison's humor. It was the kind of friendship that felt unbreakable. And that made what happened on the night of September 12, 1998, all the more chilling. The girls were gathered at Emily's house that Saturday evening. Her parents had gone out for a late anniversary dinner, leaving the trio to their own devices. It wasn't unusual. Briarwood was a small, tight-knit town where everyone knew everyone. Nobody locked their doors. Kids rode bikes until sundown. People trusted each other. At 7 p.m., the girls ordered pizza. The delivery driver later recalled Emily laughing at something as she ran to the door with a $5 bill in hand. Nothing seemed off. At 9:30 p.m., Madison's older brother dropped off a bag of board games they had forgotten at her house. He swore the girls were sitting cross-legged in the living room, a scary movie flickering on the TV. They teased him to leave quickly before he ruined their girls' night. At 10:45 p.m., a neighbor walking her dog reported hearing faint shrieks of laughter drifting from Emily's bedroom window. She smiled to herself, thinking teenagers will be teenagers. And then silence. When Emily's parents returned home just after midnight, the house was dark. At first, they assumed the girls had fallen asleep. 3 sleeping bags were laid out neatly on the floor. The pizza box sat half-eaten on the kitchen counter. The TV remote was still resting on the couch. Everything looked normal. Too normal. But the girls weren't there. Emily's mother, Karen, noticed the first detail that didn't make sense. The front door was locked from the inside. The only other exit, the back door, was bolted shut. The windows were closed, their latches still secure. It was like they just evaporated, Karen later said in an interview. The police were called within minutes. At first, officers treated it as a runaway case. But there were problems with that theory. None of the girls had taken shoes. None had brought jackets. Their pajamas were still in the room. And all 3 wallets sat untouched. Even stranger, Emily's beloved journal, the one she wrote in religiously every single night, was missing from her nightstand. By 3 a.m., searchlights swept across the quiet streets of Briarwood. Dogs sniffed the yards, officers knocked on doors. But there was nothing. No footprints, no broken locks, no trail leading away from the house. The first major inconsistency came from a neighbor across the street. At around 11:30 p.m., she swore she saw a faint glow in Emily's upstairs attic window. A window nobody ever used. The attic was supposedly sealed shut. But that night, she noticed the flicker of a light bulb and the shadow of someone moving behind the glass. When police searched the attic hours later, They found dust thick enough to write in. Old boxes, broken toys, but no girls, and no sign that anyone had been there recently. Still, the neighbor insisted. "I saw someone up there. I'll never forget it," she told reporters, her voice trembling. Investigators combed through every inch of the house, and that's when they noticed something strange. On the back of Emily's bedroom door, hidden under layers of stickers and posters, was a small carved message, roughly scratched into the wood, as if with a key or nail, were the words, "We're not supposed to be here." The writing was jagged, hurried, and it hadn't been there before that night. Whispers spread quickly through town. Some believed it was a prank. Others were convinced it was a cry for help, written in panic before the girls vanished. But whose hand had carved it? By sunrise, the search had escalated into a full-blown community crisis. Hundreds of volunteers combed the woods, helicopters circled above, and the FBI was called in. But the girls were gone. And then, on the second day of searching, an officer discovered something that deepened the mystery. In the farthest corner of Emily's attic, beneath a warped floorboard, was a small cloth pouch tied with string. Inside were 3 friendship bracelets, the exact ones the girls had been wearing that night. But there was no dust on the pouch, no cobwebs, no sign it had been sitting there for years. Someone had placed it there recently, and if the girls hadn't vanished into thin air, then the question was chilling. Who went into that attic after midnight? And why? To this day, no one agrees on the answer. The pouch in the attic changed everything. Until that moment, investigators had quietly hoped the girls had simply slipped out for an adventure, a runaway scenario that would resolve itself in a day or two. But the discovery of those 3 friendship bracelets, hidden deliberately beneath a warped floorboard, turned the case from puzzling to deeply sinister. The attic had been searched before. Officers had combed through the boxes and broken toys, brushing away cobwebs and dust. And yet no one noticed that loose plank. The pouch wasn't buried deeply, just tucked beneath, as though someone had returned after the first search and left it there. The implication was horrifying. If that pouch hadn't been there the first night, then someone else had entered the Carter home while police were still investigating. Someone who wanted the bracelets to be found. By the second day, Briarwood was in a state of panic. This was a town where doors had rarely been locked, where kids still walked to school alone, where people trusted their neighbors implicitly. Now, suspicion poisoned everything. Volunteers flooded the woods with flashlights, calling the girls names until their voices cracked. The local church held vigils every evening, candles flickering against the September chill. Parents clutched their children tighter, and strangers eyed one another with a new wariness. Emily's father, David Carter, collapsed during a press conference, his voice breaking as he begged, "Whoever has them, please, just let them go." Madison's mother refused to leave her porch, convinced her daughter might still come walking up the driveway. And Sarah's little brother, only 9 years old, carried one of her sketchbooks everywhere he went, refusing to believe she wouldn't come back. The town wasn't just grieving, it was unraveling. By the third day, the story had escaped Briarwood and exploded onto national television. Satellite vans lined the streets, reporters shouted questions at tearful parents, and the missing girls' faces appeared on every news broadcast in America. The case had all the ingredients the media feasted on: 3 innocent young girls, a picturesque small town, and a mystery inside a supposedly safe home. Headlines screamed, "Sleepover mystery stuns Briarwood. 3 girls vanish from locked house. Attic clue deepens nightmare." The attention brought pressure on the police, on the FBI, and on the families. Every misstep was magnified. Every rumor was treated like fact. And rumors were everywhere. The first theory to dominate conversation was the runaway theory. Some speculated the girls had planned their escape, perhaps inspired by Emily's restless spirit. The missing journal fueled this belief. Had Emily written down a secret plan, then carried it out? But critics tore the idea apart. If they had run away, why leave wallets, clothes, and shoes behind? And why take only the bracelets, only to plant them later? It didn't add up. The second theory was abduction. The bracelets suggested the girls had been taken against their will, their personal items left behind to confuse investigators. But if someone had abducted them, how had they entered and exited a locked house without leaving a trace? The third theory was supernatural. As absurd as it sounded, whispers spread through Briarwood. People remembered the neighbor who swore she saw shadows moving in the attic window. The carved message, "We're not supposed to be here," gave the impression of something otherworldly. Old legends about the Carter property resurfaced. Tales of a farmhand who supposedly went mad and vanished from the same house decades earlier. And then there was the fourth, darkest theory, hidden secrets. That someone close to the girls knew more than they were admitting. That the disappearance wasn't random at all, but orchestrated by someone within their circle. 1 week into the investigation, just as police were exhausting leads, a startling revelation came from a surprising source. A retired postal worker named Harold Ellis. Harold claimed that 3 nights before the disappearance, he had delivered a misdirected package to the Carter house. The package was unmarked except for a crude drawing of 3 interlocking circles. Emily's mother accepted it at the door, smiling politely, but Harold swore she looked unsettled. When investigators pressed the Carters, Karen Carter admitted there had been a package. But she claimed it contained nothing, just an empty wooden box. She insisted she had thrown it away, but the trash had already been collected, and the box was gone. This revelation shifted suspicion. Why would someone send such a cryptic package? And why hadn't the Carters reported it sooner? The emotional toll deepened as tensions between the families grew. The Jennings family accused the Carters of withholding information. "It was their house," Sarah's father muttered bitterly to reporters. "If it happened anywhere else, maybe our girls would still be here." The Lees, desperate for answers, hired a private investigator who publicly criticized the official police effort. The PI suggested the attic pouch was staged to mislead, not by a stranger, but by someone inside the investigation itself. At vigils, where families once stood together in grief, space began to grow between them. Unity fractured under the weight of suspicion. On the 12th day, a breakthrough arrived, or at least that's how it seemed. Detectives recovered security footage from a gas station 3 miles from the Carter home, time-stamped at 12:23 a.m. on the night of the disappearance. Grainy but unmistakable, the tape showed 3 girls in pajamas walking past the pumps, holding hands. The footage spread like wildfire. Reporters shouted, "They're alive!" Headlines blared, "Sleepover girls seen after midnight." Families clung to hope, but skeptics noticed something odd. The girls in the footage never looked directly at the camera. Their faces, though resembling Emily, Sarah, and Madison, seemed slightly off, as though blurred not by the tape, but by something else. And most chilling of all, the timestamp on the tape was faulty. The same camera had been malfunctioning for months, often resetting. A second carved message was found, this time inside the attic itself. Hidden behind a stack of boxes, scratched into the wooden beam near the floor, were words that made investigators freeze. "Don't look up." The letters were jagged, desperate, nearly identical to the carving on Emily's bedroom door. And as officers crouched in the attic reading the words, one of them noticed something else. Above the message, faint but visible in the low light, was a dark stain spreading across the ceiling boards. A stain that hadn't been there during the first search. For the first time, police brought in specialized equipment. As they began prying open the ceiling above the attic, a putrid smell seeped through the cracks, the kind of smell no one forgets. The search was no longer about finding 3 missing girls alive. It was about uncovering what or who had been hidden inside the Carter house all along. And what they found in that ceiling would turn the case upside down. The town thought the nightmare was over. They thought time had dulled the sharp sting of 3 girls vanishing without a trace. But they were wrong, because years later, a discovery in the most unlikely place, a locked attic above the same house where the girls were last seen, would not only reopen the case but send the entire community spiraling into new depths of horror. It had been 7 years since that summer night when Emma, Chloe, and Sarah vanished during their sleepover. 7 years since the families watched hope slowly die, replaced with grim resignation. The police case was technically open, but activity had died down. Theories were exhausted. Reporters moved on. Families either moved away or tried, painfully, to rebuild life around the absence. But the house where it all began, remained. Emma's parents never sold it. Some whispered they couldn't let go. Others thought they feared anyone else moving in, desecrating what had become, in the public's mind, a crime scene frozen in time. The house stood at the end of Willow Creek Road like a scar. Quiet, boarded up, and avoided by neighbors. No one walked their dogs past it at night. Teenagers dared each other to sneak close but never stayed long. Something about the place pressed on the chest, like the air was heavier there. It was in the spring of the 7th year that Emma's father finally made the decision. He would renovate the house. Not sell it. Not demolish it. Renovate it. Strip it down, rebuild, reclaim what had been poisoned by grief. A small construction crew came in. First, it was routine. Floors creaked, paint peeled, termites had left their mark. But then came the attic. The attic had always been sealed. A narrow trapdoor, painted shut decades earlier, with no obvious reason to open it. But while tearing out a section of the hallway ceiling, one of the workers noticed something odd. A fresh set of nails, hammered in from the inside. That was impossible. The attic wasn't supposed to have an interior latch. Curiosity turned into urgency. Workers pried the trapdoor open. Dust rained down. The stench hit first. A dry, stale odor that clung to their throats. And when the beam of a flashlight pierced the darkness above, one of the men swore and dropped it. Because what they saw would soon be described in headlines as the attic of secrets. Inside the attic was a makeshift room. Not just insulation and beams, but curtains nailed against the wood, a tattered mattress, stacks of canned food, and a lantern long burned out. It looked like someone had lived there, but that wasn't the worst part. In the far corner, half hidden beneath a moth-eaten quilt, were 3 backpacks. The same ones Emma, Chloe, and Sarah had carried to the sleepover 7 years earlier. Each still held items inside. Emma's sketchbook, the first page stained with something dark and unrecognizable. Chloe's favorite hairbrush, with strands of her auburn hair tangled in its teeth. Sarah's phone, battery long dead, but screen cracked, as if it had been thrown. Pinned to the rafters above the mattress was something that made even the hardened construction foreman stagger back. A photo of the 3 girls, taken from the night of the sleepover, smiling on Emma's porch. Across their faces, in thick black marker, someone had scrawled a single word: stay. The attic discovery triggered an immediate storm. Police swarmed the property. Evidence teams in hazmat suits combed through every inch. The public gathered outside, pressing against police tape, whispering, "They were here. They were here the whole time." But the attic only raised more questions than answers. If the girls were kept here, why hadn't anyone heard them? Who sealed the attic from the inside? And most chilling of all, why were there fresh footprints in the dust, smaller than an adult's, leading to the corner of the attic and stopping abruptly, as if the person had simply vanished? For the families, the attic was a new wound on top of an old one. Emma's mother collapsed when shown her daughter's sketchbook. Chloe's father reportedly screamed at detectives. "How could you miss this? 7 years, and you never opened the attic." The discovery reignited guilt, rage, and unbearable hope. Because if the girls had once been there, maybe, just maybe, they were still alive. The media pounced. True crime podcasts dissected every nail, every scrap of fabric. Theories spun wildly. Runaway theory, reopened. Did the girls hide there themselves to escape something? But who stocked the attic with food? Abduction theory, reinforced. Was someone keeping them there, under everyone's noses? And if so, who in the house had access? Supernatural theories. Online forums claimed the attic was a liminal space, a portal where people disappeared. The footprints that ended abruptly became fuel for ghost stories. Hidden secrets theory. Some argued the families knew more than they let on, that the attic had been deliberately concealed for years. Each theory only deepened the paranoia. Then came the revelation that turned the entire case upside down. Forensic analysts dusted the attic for prints. Among the jumble of partial smudges, one came back clear. It belonged not to a stranger, not to a family member, but to Officer Daniel Ruiz, one of the first responders the night the girls vanished. Ruiz had long retired. At the time, he'd been the one to secure the house, assuring parents the attic was inaccessible and irrelevant. Now, with his fingerprint on a lantern found in the attic, suspicion exploded. Had the girls been taken by someone sworn to protect them? When news broke, the town fell into chaos. Neighbors remembered Ruiz patrolling the streets, handing out candy to kids, fixing bikes. He was the last man anyone expected. But behind closed doors, whispers grew. Was he watching them all along? Did he build the attic room? Did he come back, even after retirement? Police moved quickly to locate Ruiz. But when they arrived at his cabin 2 towns over, they found the front door wide open. Inside, cold coffee, a half-packed bag, and a note scrawled on lined paper. It read, "You're looking in the wrong place. I was only trying to protect them." That note threw everything into chaos. Protect them? From who? From what? Had Ruiz been a villain all along? Or had he stumbled on something even darker in that house? And most terrifying of all, if he wasn't the monster, then someone else still was. The attic, instead of answering the mystery, had blown it wide open. And as detectives stared up into that dust-choked crawl space where 3 backpacks lay abandoned, one truth settled over them like a weight they could never shake. The revelation of Officer Ruiz's fingerprint and his chilling note set the case ablaze again. For weeks, speculation consumed the town. Was Ruiz a kidnapper? A protector? Or part of something darker? Investigators combed through Ruiz's past and uncovered a disturbing pattern. Old reports revealed that years before the girl's disappearance, he had filed complaints about a series of strange break-ins. Homes entered, but nothing stolen. Only children's belongings moved or tampered with. His warnings were dismissed as paranoia. Then came the breakthrough. A locked trunk hidden beneath the floorboards of Ruiz's cabin. Inside were tapes, grainy VHS recordings of the Willow Creek house attic. They showed the girls alive, whispering, frightened, their voices muffled but desperate. Ruiz appeared on some of the footage, leaving food and water, urging them to stay quiet. But in the final tape, dated just days after the disappearance, the screen cut to static, abrupt, final. Public outrage turned to confusion. If Ruiz kept them in the attic, how had police missed it? And why would he claim he was protecting them? The answer arrived in the most unexpected way. A retired detective, haunted by his own guilt over the failed investigation, returned to the Willow Creek house one stormy night. Alone, he climbed into the attic once more. Behind the nailed curtains, he found a second false wall, one even the forensics team had overlooked. Inside was a hidden passage leading down into the crawl space. There, scratched into the wood, were words written in shaky handwriting. "He isn't the one. Don't trust the man in the mask." The town spiraled into hysteria. If Ruiz wasn't the true villain, then who was the man in the mask? And more terrifying still, had the girls escaped the attic only to fall into someone else's hands? A final revelation came from Ruiz himself. Days after his arrest, he was found unresponsive in his cell. In his hand was another note. "I tried to save them. The attic was the safest place. But he found us first. Forgive me." With Ruiz dead, the truth died with him. The girls' bodies were never recovered. The attic remained sealed, the crawl space boarded up, and the Willow Creek house abandoned once more. For the families, there was no closure, only the ache of unanswered questions. Was Ruiz a twisted savior or a complicit captor? Who was the man in the mask? And why did the girls' trail vanish into silence after that attic? To this day, the story of the 3 friends who disappeared from a sleepover lingers like a scar on Willow Creek. Some say on quiet nights you can still hear faint whispers from the attic, as if the girls are still there, waiting for the truth to be found. And so the question remains, what really happened to Emma, Chloe, and Sarah? What do you think? Share your theory in the comments below.